If our brains are complex algorithms that make the majority of decisions without as much conscious input as we'd like to credit ourselves, then how much opportunity might we be missing? And what would happen if we hacked its code, deliberately changing those decisions? That experiment led to the end of my 20-year digital innovation career spent behind corporate walls, and instead sent me on an adventure flying helicopters under the Golden Gate Bridge, across British Columbia's snowy bear country, coast to coast around Australia, and becoming the second woman in the world to fly a turbine jetpack and a jet suit. I'm Jen Bewes, also known as HeliGen, and I'm a life hacker who's on a mission to circumnavigate Australia, but by jetpack. So it all started 4 years ago when a helicopter tour to a remote mountain in Maui gave me an overwhelming sense of calm and connection that I can only suggest is what they mean by feeling centered. So craving more of that in my otherwise chaotic world, I set myself a mission to write a business book on top of a remote mountain that's accessible only by helicopter. And so, of course, I would need a helicopter pilot license. So I started flight training on my return to Sydney. But it wasn't long before my passion for flight far exceeded that of my work, which had me questioning much more than the idea of writing a book. So, I mean, how had I come so far in my life and yet not known that this ridiculously crazy passion for flight was within me? And if this, then what else was there still to be discovered? It was time for me to review my human operating system and to hack the shit out of it. And so as a result, in 2018, I found myself with very little left of my former identity. The house, the career, the partying, the materialism, the character that I'd assumed had all gone. It was, and it still is, a completely destabilizing process, but one that produced the blank canvas and the funds that I needed to set out on an uncharted adventure without constraints, enabling me to challenge my every decision and start discovering my true self and the world around me. I still feel like I'm very much at the start of this adventure, and yet just 2 years in, my life has completely transformed. And now with a commercial helicopter pilot license behind me, I find myself in places that I seriously couldn't have dreamed of. Experiencing such incredible diversity in Australia's landscape from its people as well, from cattle stations to salt lakes, mountains and mines, flatlands and desert and remote islands, from the cool of the city culture to the warmth of the outback culture, the accents, the attitudes, the lifestyles, and they're also very, very different. And it just served as a reminder of how much more there is to life beyond the comfort bubble that we often find ourselves. And I knew then that I couldn't go back. My comfort bubble had burst, but the world had opened up, and sometimes quite dauntingly so. So, talking it through with a great friend over way too many beers, he asked, so what would you do? If you could do anything in the world, what is it that you would do? And so quite obviously I said, well, I'd circumnavigate Australia by jetpack. And of course, knowing me well, he didn't bat an eyelid and said, yeah, let's make it happen. And so I spent the next few months researching and planning and reaching out then to the founder of the world's only FAA approved jetpack, who happened to be visiting family in Australia when I contacted him. So I drove up the coast and I met him for lunch. I had my plans all validated and I commenced flight training with him in LA earlier this year. And then COVID happened. And so that prevented me from traveling to LA to continue my training. And with the international travel bans likely to be in place until next year, it left me wondering how I could get around that hurdle. So having flown and witnessed the engineering simplicity of the jet suit relative to the jetpack, it struck me that this was the perfect opportunity to combine my design and innovation background with my newfound passion and build a flying suit of my own. And that's exactly what I've started to do. Okay, so I've studied turbine and jet propulsion theory, but I'm no aerospace design engineer and I'm seeking a partner for that. So if that's you and you're mad enough, then please do message me. But I firmly believe that every perceived impossibility is just a possibility waiting to happen. And yet there's clearly far more to dream activation than passion and belief. So to explore that today, I've invited the three fabulous, adventurous humans whose actions, values, and significant successes continue to inspire my own. So let's see them in action. Really damn cool, guys. Please welcome David Mayman, who invented the jetpack and will be launching the world's first flying motorbike later this year.
What?
David,
fingers crossed.
What?
Yeah, better be. It's now public. You're on the hook. David Adamson, whose extreme helicopter pilot skills can be seen on Red Bull TV and documentaries and movies like Lion. And Josh Stinton, whose charity adventures have seen him hand cycling the length of Japan and completing the world's toughest ski race without ever having put on skis. Okay, thanks guys for coming. So there's 5 themes that I really want to explore with you all today. The first one is making the leap. So what does it take to psych yourself up to actually take that leap? Money matters, how you tackled funding to start up, to carry on paying the bills and to keep going. Number 3, the support networks. How did you find the right people given you are now in a new industry? Number 4, the setbacks. How did you stay motivated and resilient through many, many tough times? And personal sacrifice. What were the personal sacrifices that you had to make to get where you are today? So there's a lot to cover. So let's get started with getting started. You've each had very different careers before the world of adventure that you find yourself in today. So if you just cover a bit of that and then just tell me what it was that gave you the courage to step away from the comfort zone and into the unknown.
That's a lot of stuff, Jen. How long have we got?
Given there's 5 questions, that's about, so looking at my watch, we've actually got 10 minutes per question. That's quite a lot. But, you know, if these things all come out together, that's perfectly good as well. But, yeah, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about where you came from and, you know, how you made that first leap. So many people out there watching will be, you know, or people that aren't watching even, that might watch later, will be thinking, hang on, I've got all these great dreams, great ideas. But, you know, it's that, how do I actually get there and get started? So, yeah.
So that intro video is incredible. I just kind of want to just keep watching more of that. There was some really great stuff by you guys. And I'm sure that anybody that's watched that, they go through and they see someone flying around. Dave, they see you flying around on a jetpack around the Statue of Liberty. Other Dave, they see you flying as a film pilot. No one's probably gone, hang on, was that guy on a unicycle? Was that a unicycle? Can we go back to that bit? And I'm done.
We get you sorted out with a jet-powered unicycle.
Man, this is recorded. Perfect. Now we have it done.
And then I'll film it from a helicopter.
There you
go. Well, Jen, I'll swan dive in if you guys are happy with that. So to kind of tackle some of the questions, it's really interesting. I was actually just reading last night of Stephen King's book on writing. So it's a Stephen King book about his writing process. And one of the big takeaways from this that I've got so far is he said, in life, a lot of people spend too much time and energy looking for this place where big ideas live. And they try to go find this idea, but he said it never ever happens like that. Every idea he's had for any book, it's never that he's gone to this treasure trove of ideas, picked that idea and done something with it. he said that he's just lived a life to where he was more aware of the things that come by every single day and chose to make something of it. So it's a perception thing, and that was a big thing for me. And like we've talked about before, I really haven't done like a hard 90-degree turn out of my corporate world. I still do a lot of facilitation and speaking for corporates and all that, but I've just learned a way to kind of make it work to fund my ridiculous shenanigans. What about you other guys?
But Josh, first you did make a big jump into I can't remember which was your first adventure that you did. Was it the unicycle?
Yeah, the first one was Vasaloppet, the ski race in Sweden. So that was a lot of fun because I was at a firm at the time, and like yourself, Jen, you shared that some of your ideas came over beers. Mine did. I was in a conversation with a friend from Sweden, and he said he was going to go off and do this ski race. And I said I wanted to do it. And I'm from Colorado originally, and I've never skied, and that makes my story that much more pathetic. And so I signed up. It took me like 3 years to get a ticket for this race, and 16,000 people do the race. It's 90 kilometers long. I was living in Sydney, so the brochures don't lie. There's not a lot of snow in Manly Beach, and like Googling like how to train for cross-country skiing on land, and I found these roller skis. I'm just out roller skiing up and down the sidewalks of Sydney, and one thing led to another. I spoke with a dear friend of mine named James. He and his wife run a small charity called Field of Magic. So anyone in Australia, I do recommend checking them out. It's a small charity that helps families with children that are living with grief. So if a child has lost a loved one, it's a big community to help them not feel alone. Epic stuff. But anyway, I said, look, I'll do the ski race to help you guys out. One thing led to another. I found myself on the Today Show in Australia. My first live TV interview ever. That interview made its way back to the Norwegian Olympic ski team, who reached out and actually sponsored me to do the race. So I was like, the morning of the race, minus 17 degrees in Salem, Sweden, 7 a.m. There's an ABBA cover band playing, like pumping up the crowd, of course. And I'm in the Norwegian Olympic suit, and I've never skied. So yeah, but managed to pull it off. So
that's a bit of like putting yourself out there for that, though, wasn't there? Right. So if you hadn't put yourself out there, would you have got those opportunities to?
100% not. And you know, I think, and I'm sure that we all are cut from similar cloths in this experience, but it's all about finding. It's not so much. I mean, I get a lot of drive and passion from the charities because every challenge I take on, I'm designing the 6th one now. Every challenge is to raise awareness for a new children's charity somewhere in the world. And there's a lot of passion for that. But ultimately, I think the key, and I hope that this is something that transfers to most folks watching this, the key is giving yourself the permission to be the person to do that thing, despite what other people are telling you that you shouldn't be able to do. Because you can do it. You just have to make it work for you.
I mean, that's a great segue into David Mayman, really, from people telling you that you probably shouldn't be or couldn't achieve what you're going to go and set out to do. So, but David, before we jump into that, let's skip right the way back, and if you can just tell everybody a little bit about how you pivoted, where you started off. You're probably the master of pivot, right? From the different careers that you've had. Yeah, just on that for a quick
So
minute.
I started life as a management consultant working for Fortune 500 mining companies, and that's about as dull as you can get.
Sorry, mining company consultants out there. It's okay, don't take offense.
It also makes you a shit ton of money. So with a shit ton of money, I thought, what do I do now? And I'd always had a real love of aviation, and it really didn't matter what it was. Hang gliders, paragliding. It could be as simple or it could be as complex as flying a jet aircraft. But I knew that I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. It became absolutely soul destroying to go to the office every day and to know, hey, I'm going to make X number of bucks this week. But in the end, I had to drop that and actually sold out of that and moved into investing for a while. And I worked out that I'm a fantastic investor. What you do is you invest in something 180 degrees opposite to what I invest in, and you'll make a fortune. So
David Adamson, because he's got some. I'm pointing down there, and I don't know where it is on everybody's screen. But so David, it will also be able to touch on some investing opportunities for how he managed to make the leap too. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Right, yeah. But if you want to make a lot of money short any stock I go long on, you'll do fine. And then from there, I actually went in and owned my own gold mining operation in Indonesia for 5 years, which was completely different. I mean, that was literally trudging through jungle for week on end with the local natives looking for gold. And then from there, moving into building the jetpack company like 12 years ago, which is what I'm doing now. And again, a love of aviation. And every single exploit, like you guys saying, every single exploit people have told me it's not going to work. It's not going to happen.
Always.
You know, you should take the safe road. At later stages, I had a family. You know, what are you thinking? You've got a family. Now you've got kids. You know, you're being irresponsible. Well,
Right.
you know, if I can demonstrate that I'm taking a well thought through, risk assessment and approach, then it works.
So it was just the drive inside you. I mean, what else? I mean, to think about from a family perspective as well. And did that make that decision difficult?
I think it did in the later days, but I'm just also driven by a high degree of anxiety. Like every day I wake up, I'm on a buzz. It's like, okay, there's 50 different ways I'm going to die today. I'm going to be in charge of which one it is. You know, it's like, it's like serious. I wake up and I have so much adrenaline because I think I just have this anxiety urge. And the only way that I calm that is either by doing sport, like running myself crazy, or getting into something that I feel really, really strongly about. And Josh, I'd love to talk to you more about the kids' charities as well.
Man, I have a feeling we all have a lot of dangerous conversations ahead of us, and I look forward to all of it, man.
For sure.
Yeah.
And, David Adamson. So, I mean, yeah, your start as well was back with the investment, but on the right side. So you're kind of the opposite to David Mayman in that sense. You made some right decisions, right?
Well, firstly, I feel disadvantaged because I don't drink, so I didn't make my decision over beers, and I've sort of had to apply clarity to any decisions I've made because I've never been in an alcoholic state. But mine was sort of through necessity because I was unemployed. Because my previous life, I was a football player, and if I was any good at it, I'd have shit tons more money than David Mayman had, and I'd be living in some apartment somewhere in Los Angeles. So I was an unemployed, useless football player who had to do something, and I got into aviation. And as you said, I dabbled in the stock market, which has give me the foundation to be able to do what I needed to do.
Yeah,
you have to teach me sometime, Dave.
Teaching which bit of teaching? How to play football? But I don't wake up every morning thinking of 50 ways I can die in my helicopter. So we might have to change the thinking slightly.
Actually, that's pretty true as well. Like you're both kind of extremes on that. Although I guess I know, David Mayman, that you talk about those many ways you could die, but you are very safety conscious at the same time. And I think the same with David Adamson as well. You know, you're doing all of these really high-tech maneuvers, but safety is first and foremost. And so the things that look really cool often have been founded on things that have gone through a lot of planning, a lot of risk mitigation, and still risky, but it's a risk that you feel confident that you're understanding what's at play, right? I mean, that's with my...
Dave's at a whole different level to me. I'm also a commercial helicopter pilot, but and we have our checklists and we have our processes and procedures. But in the end, I always have to ask myself, what is the worst possible outcome from this flight I'm about to do, or whatever it is I'm about to do, and am I okay with that? Yeah.
I have so much to learn from both of you because I'm at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I don't really even look at the risks. I just kind of swan dive.
I don't know. You had some rubber mats below you when you were learning to ride that unicycle. That was the risk.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. But then what I did is once I learned to ride the unicycle, I took it 14K down a mountain in Spain in the world's biggest off-road mountain unicycle competition. So there's no map out there.
Yeah.
Of course you did, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else did you do?
Absolutely. I didn't have anything else to do that day in August 3 years ago. So yeah, laundry was done.
Now, that sounds more dangerous than flying a jetpack or a helicopter.
That is one of the biggest takeaways I'm going to take from a conversation in my career so far. Coming from you.
Yeah, you see that all over the news. Yeah.
Did you wear a helmet on your unicycle?
You did. I actually look like a full-on ice hockey goalie going down that mountain.
Wow, there's something we all have in common. We all wear helmets when we do our own individual.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, yeah, there's usually helmets involved. Safety first, kids. Safety first. And by that, we obviously mean buy a helmet and then just do whatever the hell you want to do after that. It's fine.
Buy a good helmet and go crazy.
So,
look at YouTube.
So just summarizing that first bit then, in terms of actually making that leap and doing something rather than, you know, the many people that have the dreams and the ideas and they just keep faltering to get started. So what, in summary, is probably the key things that you would recommend to other people out there who want to get started? What is it that they need beyond passion and belief to, you know, get going? I
have a model. If you guys don't mind, I'll share it just quick. I'll just speak to it. But this is a model that I've loaned from the business design world that I come from Matt and Gail Taylor, and it's called backcasting. And backcasting says, rather than, because as humans, we're wired to look at risks and barriers because that's what's kept us safe for generations. Well, most of us safe, maybe excluding us on this goal. We're wired to like be risk and barrier averse. So what we do is when we set up a goal, we put ourselves in the present day and then look to a future state of, I would like to do that thing. Like, so as an example, say if we all want to climb a mountain, we said, okay, in 2 months time, we're going to climb a mountain. So our minds, the human mind usually goes straight to shit. Okay, we've got to get fit. We've got to get gear. We have to find a mountain. We have to do all these things that we have ahead of us yet. But rather, so this model, and I use it all the time. I have to use it with every challenge. I'm actually, like I said, I'm designing my 6th challenge right now, and I'm very much in this model, which is putting myself in a future state scenario of success. So if we want to climb a mountain in 2 months' time, okay, so say 2 months and 1 week. And then at that point, we're off the top, we're off the mountain, we're back down, we're having a lunch, maybe a Coke or a beer, depending on how many people are in the conversation, and saying, we did it. And what are the, you know, now that it's a success, what were the things that surprised us along the way? What did we have to sacrifice in order to get to this place as a success? Because it's done. We don't have to worry about the doing anymore. It's done. And then what almost derailed us, but we overcame it. So again, what were the surprises, the sacrifices, and what almost derailed us, but we overcame it. When you think on that level,
an ideation thing rather than actually doing it, right?
Absolutely, because and I know the model. I've done the model with management consulting firms. I still do it like in work, and I know it well, but I still put myself through that process. And every single time it always teases out opportunities or always teases out that thing of like, yeah, I really need to stop doing that, or I need to stop hanging out with that person or these people or shift this community, whatever it is. You'll unearth opportunities rather than keep training your brain to look for the obstacles, because obstacles are useless. They're just opportunities in hiding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And is that the same for you guys?
For me, I think it's about who I associate with as well. And maybe we're going to talk about more on this later. But Josh, as you were saying, opportunities, you don't go out and select a series of opportunities from a bookshelf or ideas from a bookshelf. They come from socializing. They come from being active. They come from doing day to day what you're interested in. That's where you find your next part of life. And I think it's incredibly important, in addition to passion and activity and all of those things that you have to surround yourself by people that move you forward, don't take you backwards, because there's a heap of people out there that are freaking fantastic at pulling you down. And
so good.
And you got to choose your associates and who you spend time with.
And so that was number 3 on the list. So let's go into that a little bit more now. So I feel exactly the same. I've always, all the successes I've had in my career have always been because of great people around me and those who keep pushing me and nudging me. And every time I start having any self-doubt, they're there to kick me up the arse and say, just keep going, you can do it. And they have more confidence in me than I sometimes have in myself. So, you know, how do you do that though when you're in a different industry than the one that you're used to? Do you still leverage the past support networks, or do you reach out and make new people? And if so, how do you do that? How do you start building? You know, anybody out there is kind of going, I don't have a network. Well, how?
Well, it's like anything else in life or business, Jen. It's really easy in the end and most people do this. 99.9% of people do go, oh, it's too hard. You know, where do I start? Oh, it's all too difficult. You know, well, shame. Then don't do it. Go and sit on a couch and play TV games or something for the rest of your life. It is about activity. It's hard. It's like anything else in life. If you want to succeed in a challenge, an adventure, business, or anything else, it's freaking hard. So start with LinkedIn. You know, don't tell me that you made 100 LinkedIn requests and nobody answered. Tell me when you come back and tell me when you've made 10,000 freaking requests. Okay, don't sleep. Get at it. You know, you just got to keep going. And then there's some great AI tools these days for networking. So working out, and you know, LinkedIn is obviously one of them, but there's many others where, you know, you've got this connection and they know these people and they know these people. And Zoom and you know, these digital conferences I'm finding fantastic these days, because you don't have to walk around for a mile, and you can look up everybody's profile, you know, while you're talking to them online. Just go hard.
You exercise every day, but you wish to not walk around a conference. Is that right?
When I go exercising, I can have my Zoom conference on my heads up display.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that though. It's, you know, because a lot of people talk about motivation like it's a thing, right? It's a thing that I can have. So now I've got my motivation, as if I've gone to the place in the world where motivation exists. I chose my motivation and now I have it and I've got it on my desk at work and I'm good because I'm motivated. It's like, what? Motivation isn't a thing you get. I think motivation is a byproduct of action. So I'm completely on the same page with you. You just have to, you know, reach out, connect with people. I've got currently three incredible women in my world that are volunteering their time to help me with the vision for the next challenge. Of women named Kyoko, Francesca, and Aditi that have just reached out. And this was all like folks I've never met in person, any of them actually. Well, no one, but like outside of that, just people that have reached out, and you just have to put yourself out there. But I think the root of that is, again, giving yourself the permission to be that person and having a really strong vision, like an undeniable vision for what it is that you want to do. And then once you have that, don't take no for an answer. As you said, you get knocked back so much. Oh man, like reaching out for folks and people saying like, you want to do what? Oh, that's silly. I'm not going to back it. Like, bullshit.
But also once you've got that, Josh, it makes you so much more effective at communicating the story. Like once you've given yourself permission to do that.
Yeah.
And the more that you socialize this, the more actively you talk about what you're doing, the clearer it becomes in your head. You become a movie maker. You're explaining a script to a potential producer or an investor. You get so clear. It's like you've already done it. And that's what I find. And then that becomes engaging for other people. They buy in on that clarity of vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done with the whole flying piece and now the circumnavigation, you know, and whether that ends up being a trans-Australia or the full circumnavigation, I don't know yet. But I've been putting it out there earlier than I would normally have done. And I found that it helps make more connections that then you go, oh, right, you know, such and such, and you're interested as well. And, you know, people come out of the woodwork, and the more you tell the story, the more you can visualize it and the more motivated you get to going, I'm going to make this happen, and I can. You know, there's the theory of planned behavior that says any behavior requires three things. It requires the right attitude, in terms of the attitude that I really want to do this, the perceived behavioral control, which is do I think that I can actually do it? So I want to do it, but can I actually do it? So if I ask you to jump, you know, a meter, can I actually do it? Yeah. Do I want to? Well, it's only a meter, I might as well do it anyway. And then the third one is the social norms. So what are people going to say about it? The networks of people around you. So I might have the right attitude that I really want to do it. I believe that I can do it, but everybody around me is saying I can't. And so what type of personality then am I? So I would guess that the four of us here are more likely to say, nah, don't care what the rest of them say, unless there are the ones that you really kind of look up to and go, they're very credible in that space, I should be listening. But otherwise, but a lot of people, they listen a lot to what's going on around them, and that may be the breaking point for them. And it's really quite interesting to use that tool as going, okay, well, how much attitude have I got, positive attitude? How much do I really believe that I can achieve this? And can I build, if the networks around me aren't existing that are supporting me for it, then how do I build those? Which is exactly.
That's very true. And there are some people that just can't move left or right without having authority or without having the say-so from all their support group. And I think social media doesn't help with that sometimes. You have to build your own self-esteem and your own energy and your own confidence step by step before you can make some of these big leaps. And right. if people don't have that already, they can get it. It's not like it's not dead in the water. Start with some small tasks. Okay, set yourself some small tasks towards your big tasks. Do those, win those. You'll find more people come around you. You know, if you're going to make a move, just start with like a 1-minute clip about a 60-minute story. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Just make the first step and you start going. But yeah, David.
So from my background, which sounds very similar to David and probably Josh, you've got to add some structure to it, and that you've got to set yourself goals. But you've got to be adaptable, and you've got to be able to change the structure as you deem, or as you. I think we're gonna come on to setbacks next, are we?
Yeah, whenever, just free flowing.
Well, you've got if you haven't got a structure, you don't really have any direction to follow. And if you can't adapt that structure, then when you do, and you will many times, you'll hit more setbacks than you will not having a setback. And if you can't adapt to the structure you've set, then you're going to keep banging your head off a brick wall.
So can you give me some examples of that? I mean, I know we've also flipping back to the support networks as well. So you came over to Australia from Scotland to set up something on your own. And did you have any support network here? How did you build that? And what structure did you put in place?
Is it obvious I'm from Scotland?
Yeah, I haven't mastered the Aussie accent. Sorry.
I arrived 24 years ago with $200 in a backpack, and I've still got the backpack, and I've only got $100 left. But I definitely had a clear plan of what I needed to do, and fortunately, in the industry that I'm in, similar to David, there's like a career path or a apprenticeship that you have to follow, because you got to gain experience, you got to gain qualifications. And the best way that I found that I did that was using my accent to its advantage, that when I spoke to someone in the aviation game, they seemed to remember who I was when I rang them up 6 months later to see if that job was still available.
But they didn't know what you were saying.
Or they had no idea what you were talking about, Dave.
No, because I used to draw pictures, and they get the gist of it.
Right.
Brilliant. So some of the other things are around, so we kind of touched on support networks and making leap. And one of the other things is like the financial stability as well, particularly I think as you go through your career when you're younger, and David, you made the leap younger than the rest of us, I think. And I think it's an assumption would be that it would be easier when you're younger because you've got less ties to you, you know, less things that you've got loyalties towards. And as you move up in, for me anyway, as I moved up in the corporate career and started making more money, it's not that you actually, well, for me, it wasn't that I made more money and saved it. I increased everything underneath that. So it was always just a margin going up and up and up. So on the surface, it looked like I should be, you know, really wealthy, but really all of the stuff that was building up, which meant then to try and make the leap out of that is really hard because you're going to let everybody down. And, you know, with having a family as well and risking all of that, saying, actually, we need to sell the house. I, you know, can't afford to do this without that, you know, so having to impact others in order to follow something that is coming so passionately from within, I felt really challenging. So, you know, but the money for me, the flip side of that is the money that came through that career also did help to buy the house and build all that stuff up. So selling that released the cash and then I could get started. But for others who are younger in the journey, unless like David Adamson, they invest really wisely and get some stocks and shares from a young age. But how else how else do you get the finance to make the leap? Or do you need a lot of money? I mean, David, for coming along and going, oh, I'm going to get a jetpack. Now I've heard already the gold mine and even though there's a gold mine and then there's a loss of shares on the other side. So probably somewhere in the middle, but you know, how did you have to have a lot of investment up front before you go, right, I'm going to do it? And how did you go around that?
This is an age-old question, Jen, and there's no right answer really. Like when to jump out of a successful career to move into something that really will change your life is a very difficult question to answer. Too early, and maybe you fall on your face. Too late, by that time you've got mortgage, family commitments and everything else. So it really is a case-by-case thing. What I found was that, again, having people that fall in love with what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve makes all the difference, because that will open doors to funding and the right kind of funding you want. You don't, personally, I don't want I don't want VC funding where people are just looking for a dollar return in something. I want people that are passionate about what I'm doing. And again, the more you are doing, the more you will find those people. The more active you are, the more you're networking, the more likely you're going to find somebody. And they're going to say, you know, I've got people involved in jetpack aviation that have not that much money, but also people that have billions of dollars, and they want to see the flying motorcycle succeed. And they know we me too. They know we spend money incredibly carefully. And that's the other thing, is trust. If anybody is going to invest in your dream, you have to be able to build trust. You have to be able to show them you ain't going to waste a cent. So that's a really hard one, Jen, but yeah.
Adamson, I mean, you started flight school over in Perth when you first came over, right? And how did you go about that?
Well, I was just thinking, who's the guy that liked the Razor so much he bought the company? Or am I showing my age here? Wasn't there a guy who, Remington, didn't he like the Razor so much he bought the Victor Khayyam? He liked the company so much he bought the company.
Right.
That's what I ended up doing. I got a job and I liked it so much I ended up buying the company.
Yeah.
And then,
right.
But I mean, where does the money come from to do that?
I didn't have any. You just people will just give you money with high interest rates, thinking that you're going to make a mass profit and pay them back in a short period of time.
So was that, you mean like from a loan from a bank, or you're talking about investors, or?
No, you have to get no. There's not many investors that would put as much money for as little return into the aviation game.
Yeah, it's a problem with aviation. I think this is probably one of the hardest spaces, because it is something that we're all motivated by passion, and yet, you know, the margins on it are really tiny. So it's a very volatile.
The old adage is to, you know, if you want to make a small fortune in aviation, start with a large one.
Yeah.
But I do have a view of talking with people who their dreams or aspirations are to learn to fly, own their own helicopter. You can see, I think, I don't know, because I've been quite fortunate that I was never got to this stage. I did it through necessity. But when you start to lose the passion for what it is that you're currently doing, and then you start looking for other avenues, that's probably the time that you need to do something, not carry on with no passion for what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly true for me. And how about you, Josh?
I think it's interesting. I mean, what is the definition of success means different things to different people. And, you know, shooting off, it's funny because as a bit of a default, there's a lot of there's like dollar signs associated to it. And yeah, certainly, I mean, obviously we all have to pay the bills. There's no joke about that. I mean, this isn't like a big after school activity for all of us. It's a life change in a pretty big way. We're redesigning our story in pretty big ways. But again, back to what I learned from my my reading, I said just last night from what Stephen King had to say. It's not like you're going to go out and just get this idea. It's about it's having a level of awareness. It's about having a perception at the ready to when things show up, you know how to tune into them in the right way. And for me, like my funding model, I'm a bit of a different animal. I actually refuse to make any money out of any of my challenges. I won't. Like 100% of every dollar that ever gets raised goes directly to the charity. I gave a talk in Australia a number of years. I live in Norway now, but I was in Australia a couple of years ago. And as a gift after the keynote, this insurance company in Australia gave me a $4,500 check to help me fund the challenge I had coming up in Japan, which I had them sign right to the charity. Like, and a lot of people are like, you idiot, like this is costing you money. But what I did, like how I earned money, was completely by accident. So I was in management consulting at a couple of the big four firms. I said, I still do help those folks out and great friends there. But I remember it was after the end of when I finished the ski race, I came back to Australia. And the charity Field of Magic asked me to give a talk about my experience. And it was at their charity ball night, 350 people in the room. It was easy enough. I mean, the audience was already connected to what I was doing. They were there to support the charity anyway. And there was an agency in the audience, and he came up and he said, "Who represents you?" And I was like, "What?" And then he's, "Well, we'll have talks about giving keynotes." And just because I was plugged into it, I really chased after it. And now I treat keynote speaking as a craft, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And I've just made that, which had nothing to do with my life before, but just because I had this one little thing pop up on my radar, and now I've actually shifted, I've made a career out of that. And so that's how I earn money. So it wasn't how do I start this? And I have received feedback along the way on creating a foundation and appointing myself as a director, so that way I could receive a cutback in funds and all that. And I've shied entirely away from it because my goal was entirely different. But now I can say, I mean, just transparent, this is the purpose of this conversation. I earn a better living now than I ever have in my life before, which was a byproduct because I was chasing my passion, and it can happen.
That's pretty cool. So you've got like one foot in the corporate world that is bringing in the cash. Then you're using that cash to fund the adventures, yep. And also to fund through others to generate the revenue for other charities, which then through doing those things has kind of closed the loop back, right? So it's really, I mean, it's beautiful, really. But it does take, you know, there must be a certain level of passion for the corporate world to maintain and continue that as well. Whereas for me, I struggle now with having had the taste of aviation, and perhaps we should just do not start flying because you may want to give everything else up. But actually, just very quickly, there was somebody who had asked a question about where should you start to learn to fly if you want to get into aviation. But I think we might park that and we can have that conversation offline if that person just wants to message either one of us, probably not Josh, because
Jen, the answer is very simple and very quick. Come to Jetpack Aviation in California and you can learn to fly.
Well, Very true. All
Don't worry about helicopters and airplanes and all that kind of stuff.
Aviation is such a small network community, and jetpack must be minuscule compared to the aviation industry.
It's getting warm in here. It's a little warm.
And the employment opportunities with jetpacks?
Massively and growing rapidly.
Yeah.
Growing
Well,
rapidly.
they have to grow from zero. They have to go up from zero. You can't go negative.
I'm sorry, from an employee engagement perspective, any job prospectus that included jetpack, your CVs are just going to be flooding. I mean, to be fair, like
No, I'm in there first.
the
Just
helicopters as well.
So we've got 12 minutes left. So setbacks and personal sacrifices are the other two things that we need to touch on. So setbacks, I mean, part of the journey after you've got started, you can be, for me, it's like I have like the roller coaster of emotions, you know, really excited, and 1 minute I'm like, yeah, everything's going super well, and the next minute like way down, and I've met some really, really dark days, and I think, you know, through I attend the TED sessions over in Vancouver, and meeting people behind the scenes of that. I've spoken to a lot of people who are highly successful, and one thing that really struck me was how many go through these really, really deeply dark days, and it's kind of masked by all of the great stuff that they do across the media. And so I just want to, you know, a bit of insight. Have you guys been there as well? And if you have, how do you make it through that and still keep persevering and get out of that you know, the bottom of the pit and get yourself back up again?
Just a quick one in that I experienced that a lot, and it's all part of the process. So for me, because mine's are challenge based, so there's usually one challenge per year. Right after the challenge, I crash hard, because it's an association thing, and this is part of the process. But I'm no longer the person that's going to bicycle across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm the person that just bicycled across the Atlantic Ocean, and that shift is like, it's an association disconnect for a little bit, and just really taking in that learning. And I was given some advice by an Olympic cross-country skier from Slovenia, a dear friend of mine, Barbara Jezercek, and she said the Olympic training, the Olympic camp at the Olympics, just after the Olympics, is one of the darkest places she's ever been. So it doesn't matter if people got gold or they didn't complete their event. There's like psychologists and behaviorists, like all these folks that come in and just help people that are now de-associating from the fact that they were going to do this one thing in Vancouver or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's real, but it's a part of the process. You know, if you're just there for the Christmas mornings, it's you're kidding yourself. You know, fun doesn't mean not having the hard times.
It's just such a super high, isn't it? And so if the higher the high, the lower the low, right?
Sure.
But I think also because it consumes everything to achieve that goal. You put 110%, you put everything else on hold, and suddenly there's this vacuum. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
What do I do with that?
Yeah. And so what do you do with that? You know, how do you get yourself out of it? Because when you're there, it's very easy to kind of stand here and smile. Laugh about it now, but yeah.
I have a sort of different. I have a different perspective when the setbacks being. I go to some pretty spectacular places to do pretty spectacular things with a helicopter, but as David said, you're putting a lot of effort into the organisation, getting permits, getting helicopters, organising, and then when you're there, the pressure's on you there to actually perform and to produce what they want, and then there's the after effect that you're waiting for. The ramifications of what you've done from the general public observing your movements. So after I've been somewhere, it takes anything up to 3 months before I review. And actually, without even looking, I need to look at the pictures or the video that I've taken on location to actually appreciate what the opportunities that I had. But by that time, I'm already into another project, getting involved in that. So there's a master a plateau.
Yeah.
What do you mean? When you say a master of plateau, it means so you're not experiencing the highs from it?
So by the time 3 months have gone from one of the projects, I'm already up to my armpits in organising another project.
Right.
Yeah.
So by the time, so I don't have enough time to do much reflection or to sit there and go, oh, well, that was quite interesting. I'm already into another project. And then I've got another 3 projects in my calendar that I'm already thinking about how to organize for those ones.
So given that,
I'm the same, Dave. I need to roll on to the next goal, the next project. I'm not somebody that does particularly well at reflecting on the past.
And is that because of how it makes you feel to be without? Is it a bit of an addiction to just keep going?
For sure. It's very addictive. I think any kind of, very big goal, any very big goal, if you fight for that and you achieve it, it's very addictive.
I don't know about the other 2 guys, but in the last 3 months, I have done the least amount of flying in a helicopter in my 24 years, and I've done in the last 3 months, and my bank account is reflecting that. So I don't know what the other 2 guys feel, but surely giving the opportunity that we can to reflect and what the opportunities that we do get to do, then that's what sort of hit home for me in the last 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, Jen, as you know, I've had some extremely low periods when building the jetpack over 10 years, literally failure after failure. I've spent 4 lots of times in hospital, including ICU. I've got burns to a lot of my body.
Anybody watch Own the Sky? It's just an epic documentary, better than watching Man Goes to the Moon, for sure.
Where can we find that at? Is it just on the website, or I'd love to see that.
Yeah, watch it.
We can. It's called Own the Sky. If you go to our website, I'm sure there's a way to find it. That's a really good point, Josh. We should organize that. It's available on Amazon in America, but I'm not sure. And it does play from time to time, free to air. But bottom line is, we were trying to build something that hadn't been built before, technically, and the propulsion systems we were using were crap. They would blow up, they would burn, they would destroy themselves. And this would happen day after day after day, like literally day after day. And I was funding a lot of this myself, and having to say to my family, well, we had this, and now we have that, and a burnt jetpack. And that went on for years, literally years. Becomes pretty dark and depressed, and then of course.
So what is it?
Then you have the occasional good day when things go right, and that brings you back up, So you have this balance. For me, I have this psychological bank balance where I have those good days, and then it slowly erodes.
Right. But the good days can't account for so much. It's like, I'm back, even if it's for 5 minutes, right?
Right.
So we've got 4.5 minutes left. Just in terms though, so can we just summarize where should you go, or where do you go for support when you're in that lowest point? How do you get out of it? Do you rely on other people? I mean, there's all sorts of methods, but what's your method? Is it self-talk, or is it,
I guess it depends on the low point, because they're all kind of unique in their own way. Sometimes I'm very social. I've got a lot of incredibly good friends and family, so I do leech onto them, when I do come to needing a bit of energy. But also, I am pretty great at spending time by myself as well, and sometimes that's what I need to recharge the energy bucket. I don't think, as you said before, Dave, about many other things, I don't think there's one answer that fits.
I think you're right, Josh. I think it's personality by personality, but I find it's important to be able to not just deal with other people. Like, you do need to have some resilience yourself and be able to sit down and just put the next step forward. And that's sometimes what it's about. It's just about getting up the next morning and putting the next step forward, because things will come right. And you just you just have to keep going. That's the big thing.
It goes back to the structure you've set yourself, and within that structure you've set yourself achievement points or goals that you're trying to achieve, and you need to adapt to be able to get to. You may take a different route, but you're still trying to get to the same destination.
Right. Never give up.
And for me, I do a lot of self-talk, so I've run the risk of being taken away by the men in white coats for saying this, but I have a little person that I call my housemate who gives me constant narrative and nagging, and I often say, God, I just wish this housemate would disappear. She's full of logic and like makes all the rational decisions and drives me absolutely freaking nuts. Whereas I feel that I am the emotional one that's just like, yeah, let's go do it. I really want to go, yeah. And then I hear the housemate going, Robert, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. So I work with my housemate, and at times when I'm really low, my housemate really serves me well. She puts me back in my place and helps me out of that. So yeah, call me crazy. But
good take on it, Jen. Yeah. It's your counterfoil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an aviation term?
What's that? Aviation.
You've got a co-pilot. You got a co-pilot.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like
Before we do break up and get cut off, I want to say my next challenge does have to do with the sky, and I think we have a conversation that would be very helpful in that.
Love to.
Cool. Are you going to announce that?
Well, yeah. So I want to be the first person in human history to run through the sky. So I'm working with some engineers out of NTNU here in Norway, and I'm going to start in Lindesnes in the south, and basically working with like this massive helium-filled balloon, and also figuring out the permits with the Civil Aviation Authority for Norway to run 1,700 kilometers to the Arctic up in North Cape. So maybe if we get a cheeky rocket, like jetpack in the back of that or something.
That's freaking awesome, dude. I love it.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah, but we have a lot of. We'll stay in touch. We have a lot of conversations to have. I think you might help save my life.
I've got a helicopter with a camera.
Yes.
Cool. There you go. So yeah, I used to be in university, and then like I remembered very vividly there was like 20 people on the floor, and then there were like 4 Davids out of 20 people, and like I have this feeling now.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so thank you so much for spending time to share. I think there were several objectives of this thing, right? Number one, although obviously we call it a festival and we invited you to this, it's not really a festival. It's actually a community in this a part of the world, and actually indeed globally. We started like 11 years ago when the social internet happened, and then we founded TEDx Singapore, and then one thing leads to another thing. I mean, we literally have connections and friends around this whole region. So a lot of it, the reason why I call this kitchen table conversations is because whenever anybody wants to do stuff, it's like cooking a dish, right? You're the cook, you have this vision, but you're missing ingredients. So the whole entire purpose of having this community is that anyone can be a cook and anyone can be ingredient, because we're all, I mean, everybody's better off if we all help each other, right? Cook up stuff and be ingredients and help people and people will help you, right? So it's beyond.
Dave, it's a really bad analogy for anybody that, like me, that only really uses a microwave. Just saying.
That's cooking fast. You're gonna cook fast, things will happen, right? And as Jen knows, right? I mean, you were recently looking for some sort of like a 3D engineer or something, and I immediately connected you with the TEDx network in Australia. And within not even like a minute, someone said, "Oh, I know this person," right? So that's the whole idea. So I mean, basically, the question I always ask people is like, if you're missing any ingredient, just come to this network and community. It's not just a campus party. It's TEDx and Obama Leaders Foundation, and it's so many people here with good intentions and crazy ideas. And actually, the next session, which I think is just about going to start, is this crazy guy, and I think he could be one of the. Well, I don't know whether that's 50 Shades of Craziness or something. But if you can believe, he went to North Korea and started an exchange program with Singapore, and he actually has been bringing North Koreans to Singapore and people from outside North Korea into North Korea to teach the North Koreans entrepreneurship. So it's like mind-boggling, right? This is North Korea, okay? Wow. And he's been doing this for 5 years. He's taught thousands and thousands of North Koreans, and his group is on Facebook, okay? It's called the Chosun Exchange. And one of the videos is a room of entirely gray and blue clad North Koreans, and they're doing the Macarena. So yeah, talk about adventurous stuff.
Yeah.
So he's actually on stage right now on Global Main Stage. So I wanted you guys to actually know about this, and also like this is the beginning and not the end for sure. But we should close the session and then hop over. I would seriously hop over to Main Stage and listen to Geoffrey tell his story.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having us all today.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. See you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
See
Bye-bye,
ya.
guys.
Good luck.
Bye. Bye.